This is E4 Practical Engineering Costs and Benefits. So it's a group of ideas that I think we'll find very useful in thinking about costs. The first one is life cycle costing. So the engineers should think about the costs of products for the entire life cycle of a product. So the need is established, design phase, manufacture service, and then importantly, end of life considerations for a product. How is the consumer going to dispose of the product? And then presumably the cycle begins again when new products are developed. And the key insight here is that it's important to spend as much time as needed on the planning stage, because that is when any changes to a design, for example, can be done in the least costly way. So early decisions tend to get locked in. They get locked in for all sorts of reasons. The video about the bullet train in California is a really good example of sort of a political lock-in where people have thrown a lot of money into a project and the cost is escalating, but there's a feeling of, oh, we put so much money in already, we should probably continue. Of course, that's not necessarily the case because sunk costs are irrelevant, as all economists know. But anyway, take a look at that video. It's pretty sobering. So that's the first idea, that life cycle considerations are important. And the second really big idea in this set of notes, which are quite extensive, so do take a look at them, is the idea of taking into account not just the private costs and benefits of activities, but also the social costs and benefits. So economists divide costs and benefits into both private costs and benefits are those that are borne by individuals. So when you are thinking about whether to buy a product, or a business is thinking about how to produce a product, they think about the costs and benefits that directly are paid out of pocket, or the opportunity cost of their own resources. So these are incurred by the parties to the transaction. But whenever we do something, we often have effects on other people in society. So there are also social costs and benefits. So when we make a choice, for example, to buy cigarettes, we may incur costs on other people who didn't get to take part in that decision. So the social costs and benefits are borne by society at large. And these costs and benefits can occur at the production end of things, or they could occur in consumption. So, for example, to give you an idea of a social cost in production, there's a very famous example of Humboldt Bay, which is a beautiful bay in California. And there were two paper mills, and they were discharging very nasty wastewater into the bay. And apart from damaging local fishes, they were also causing illness among surfers. It was a popular place to go surfing. So there were a lot of social costs associated with the production of paper at this particular place. So the paper mill would only be worried about, what am I paying my workers? What am I paying for lumber? And all the things that concern a private business. But production sometimes incurs social costs. Sometimes there can be, so this would be the surfers in Humboldt Bay would be a good example of that. Eventually there was a lawsuit, the surfers won, and they kind of had to clean up their act, though not as much as you maybe would hope. I think they had to build a longer pipe so the water went further out before it was discharged. But anyway, that's something where you have a social cost in production. You can also have a social benefit in production, and that would mainly be things like spillover benefits, where you have a new invention of some type and then it gets adopted elsewhere in the economy. Or maybe you train your workers and then they're able to be more productive maybe elsewhere in the economy, or you revitalize a town by locating a production plant in a town. And then on the consumption side, there can be costs, social costs on with consumption. So, for example, I mentioned the cigarettes. Smokers create secondhand smoke. And that's a negative for people who are not party to the transaction to buy the cigarettes. And then there are other goods that actually benefit people other than the people who purchase them. So a good example of that is actually education. Educated people make better citizens. They vote more, their children are more educated. They're very unlikely to need, these would be people with college degrees or even high school degrees is a net positive for society, but educated people benefit other people in society. They don't make benefit. So they provide benefits to other people in society by being better citizens, better neighbors. So given that we have this problem, we get this problem with which economists call market failure. And market failure, there's several sources of market failure, but this particular source arises because private individuals ignore social costs and benefits when making decisions about what to produce and how to produce. And so you get the result that a free market will lead to excess production of goods with costs and underproduction of goods with external benefits. So the solution, well, there's several solutions. A common one is government-based. So the government comes along and they might actually take some goods and ban them. And one solution then is to, for example, ban asbestos. So you just decide there's no safe level of production of this material, so we're just going to ban it. More likely, you will see the government taxing, say, cigarettes. So the government decides to levy a tax that hopefully is sufficient to alter the incentives for people buying cigarettes so that they essentially incorporate the social costs of purchasing cigarettes. So that's one solution. And then the other solution is market-based, which has to do with informed consumers and increasingly, I think, with the internet and people being able to find information quickly, which is that consumers will put pressure on companies and they may alter their own behavior. So consumers have become very educated about plastic straws, for example, and they have been pressurizing companies to come up with alternatives, so paper straws or non-disposable straws or something like that. So this is, as I said, this is a very important area in economics. You can find information about this in principles texts. But just be very aware of the fact that it's commonly the case that private costs and benefits are different from social costs and benefits. I want to put one little proviso in here, though, which is that government activity is costly. And so we shouldn't try and fix trivial problems. So if you have a situation where the social cost is very small or the social cost or the social benefit is small too, it's probably not worth incurring the additional costs of government activity in terms of having to have a bureaucracy to administer a tax or a subsidy. So we should only really try to fix significant problems, significant sources of market failure. And as I said, there's an awful lot of other information in E4 about reliability of costs and benefit estimates and various other things that I really want you to look at. And so please do that. All right, we'll see you in the next video.